Hey guys, I'm back, this time without my trusty dog Pudge, unfortunately. But as you can tell by the title, I'm doing something a little different this week. Honestly, I'm kind of just winging it. I don't have anything super prepared planned, but it's been just kind of a wild 2 weeks, and I felt like while it was fresh, I should just let it all out. And I did try filming what I had planned, and I just couldn't do it because when I get in periods like this of just like depression and anxiety, I don't want to do plant things. Like, I don't even want to be near my plants. I don't want to care for them. I don't want to look at them. I just pretend like they're invisible, and I will talk more about that later on in this video. I do have something sort of plant themed. Well, I mean, it is plant themed, but it's not kind of along the lines of my usual content. But I was hoping that this video would be more like podcast style, where you just kind of let it play in the background and you don't really need to look at the screen. But if you want, you can watch me do an arts and crafts project that may or may not be a disaster. I'm recording this video before I actually do it, and keep in mind, I am not an artist. I don't usually do anything crafty like this. This is totally out of my comfort zone, but I had an idea a few months ago that I'm just executing now since the timing felt right. But basically, I've been drying dead leaves for like 3 months, and I wanted to paint over them. The plant I'm painting today is a Anthurium warocqueanum. This leaf has sentimental meaning to me because it was one of my first wish list purchases, and it was like the first leaf that I grew in my care after rehabbing it for a really long time. And I was so sad when it died, so I just couldn't throw it away. So I preserved it, and I'm glad I did because it's a beautiful leaf and I hope I can do it justice. But I don't really have high hopes, to be honest, but I'm definitely gonna try. And if you're wondering how I dried this, I didn't do anything fancy. I literally just like shoved it between 2 pieces of like paper, and I put something heavy over it, and I just kind of let it dry. And I checked on it about once a week to replace the paper because it does like absorb all that moisture. I kept it somewhere dry, and yeah. I mean, it kind of worked. It's like paper now, so I'm sure that there's better ways to do it, but I mean, I kind of just winged it, so that was the result of that experiment. Before I start this video, I also wanted to mention that I had 2 projects that I wrapped up this week for some clients, and it required a lot of talking, so I am sounding a little hoarse. I was trying to put off doing this voiceover as long as I could, but just it's cutting it really close to the deadline now, so that is why I sound the way I sound. My voice is probably just gonna sound like this the whole way through. I literally have a cup of honey and lemon tea next to me, but I still sound like Tommy from Rugrats. So bear with me. Of course, no video would be complete without the Pudge sounds in the background. So sorry if it's distracting, but that's just comes with the territory. I think I say that in every video now. I don't really know the best way to start this conversation, but I feel like it makes most sense to maybe start at the very beginning when I had my first panic attack. Because if I had to pinpoint a time in my life where I was aware that something was going on with me that I didn't understand, it was definitely that first panic attack. And that happened when I was 19 years old, and I am turning 32 this year. So I never had any issues with anxiety or depression before this incident. I was actually a much different person, like in my teenage years and like my early teen years. And I considered myself to be like a pretty happy, carefree person. I mean, I had a great upbringing. I have loving parents, a roof over my head. I was cared for. I mean, the bottom line is I was privileged. I mean, I am still privileged, but I mean, I think compared to some other people, like, I had a very, very good upbringing. I mean, not to say that I didn't have hardships, but it was nothing really out of the ordinary of like what the average person would experience in their life, I would say. But I mean, I didn't really have much to be worried about. So going back to what I was saying, I had my first panic attack when I was 19. I was really sick at the time. I had a high fever. I had the chills. I was coughing, a sore throat. I was hallucinating because my fever was so high at one point, and I just had the works. And I remember thinking, I am so not getting out of this. Whatever illness I have, this is it for me. This is how I go out. And I had never been that sick before, and it was actually really, really scary. And actually, I think I want to take a really, really quick detour and just throw some shade at the United States of America. Because healthcare there is a joke. I'm an American citizen living in British Columbia, Canada as a permanent resident, and honestly, I didn't realize how not normal the healthcare system was in the States until I lived here. And the reason I didn't go to the doctor when all of this was happening was because I was 19, working a minimum wage job, and I had kind of just moved out. I was putting myself through school and trying to pay rent and learn how to be an adult and shit. And I'm pretty sure at all times I had like $200 to my name after all my bills have been paid. And there was no way I was going to go to the doctor and get hit with a huge medical bill. That just like wasn't an option for me, which is actually so fucked up that Americans are even put in that predicament where they refuse to get medical care because of their financial state. So anyway, that's my rant. Back to the story. I thought I was dying. So I was in my bedroom, I'm sweating, I'm coughing, I'm like wrapped in 3 blankets because I'm so cold. And I remember thinking, like, what the fuck? Am I actually gonna die on this cheap ass IKEA bed while my roommate is watching Sex and the City in the next room? And legit, that was like one of my last thoughts. And I'm thinking, this is so embarrassing because when I die, they're gonna know I have like $40 in my bank account, and my dad is gonna be so pissed that I maxed out my credit card and I have cigarettes in my glove compartment that I need to throw away, and like I need to make freaking preparations for my death. I cannot go out this way. So I'm spiraling, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but my mind was going to that place. And so the next thing I know, I'm like hyperventilating and I can't get a rhythm to my breathing. I'm gasping for air, but nothing is actually going into my lungs. So I'm super dizzy, the room is spinning, and somehow I managed to get out of bed, and I must have knocked something over on the way to the door, which made like a really loud banging sound. So, my roommate, who's actually still one of my best friends, like flies into the room, and she said I was completely pale and my lips didn't look a normal color. And she's like, I think I need to call 911. And I'm like, do not call 911, because again, like I said, I was not going to be taken away in an ambulance. I didn't want to be hit with that medical bill, or I didn't want my parents to be hit with that medical bill. So I'm like, do not call 911. And then I blacked out. When I finally regained consciousness, the first thing I see are 4 paramedics hovering over me. I have an oxygen mask on my face. Someone's taking like my blood pressure or something. And I'm like, Christine, she called the fucking ambulance. But I was kind of happy that I was like, oh, I didn't die. Awesome. I can see from across the room that my friend is sifting through my stuff on my dresser, and one of the paramedics are like, oh, she's conscious. And then they start asking me where I keep my medication. So I reach over my head and I open a top drawer where I keep my birth control and vitamin C, and they all sort of laugh and are like, no ma'am, we mean your prescriptions. And I guess they were referring to any medications that I might be taking for depression or anxiety, because he's like, you just had a panic attack, and do you take anything for those? And I'm like, listen, buddy, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, because what I just experienced was not a panic attack. Like, I was literally drifting into the afterlife. So whatever flu this is, I just need some really strong medications, because my soul was hovering over my body, and that could not have been a panic attack. And he was like, I'm not denying that you are very sick and you actually do need to go see a doctor, but the reason we're here is because you fainted from having a panic attack. So at that point, I'm like, whatever, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't really get it, because I thought panic attacks were what you see in the movies, where the main character is freaking out about something and is pacing the room and rambling a mile a minute and banging their hands against their head, and then someone comes into the room and embraces them like, it's gonna be okay, and then they both have a good laugh, and that's it. That's what I thought a panic attack was. So anyway, I didn't really consider that something underlying could be going on, and I just brushed it off as a one-time thing and just hoped that it wouldn't happen again. And that was the end of that situation. But I do want to say that just because you have a panic attack, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something underlying going on. Like, I don't want you to listen to this and think, oh, I've had a panic attack before, I need to go see my therapist and get medication and stuff, and something is wrong with me. Like, you can definitely have a single isolated incident where nothing ever recurs and just have that be that. So don't listen to this and freak out and jump to conclusions. I just wanted to, put that out there. Okay, so I'm about to get into the sort of heavier stuff, and to be honest, I'm kind of terrified of doing this, and I've considered for a while if I even wanted to include this part in the video, but I think that talking about this topic is going to be a really important part of conveying my entire story and my entire truth, so that people who may not understand anxiety and depression have a better insight into the causes of it and what people like me deal with. I want to take a moment to speak directly to my close friends and family that might be listening to this right now. My therapist has reminded me that when this comes up in conversation with people that are close to me, I have to remind them that this isn't about them. And of course, there are going to be questions and concerns, and there are going to be people who feel like it's their right to know what happened, but I want to make it super clear that I understand now that this is solely about me. And it took a lot of work for me to get to this place, but I understand now. And nobody really has the right to tell me how I should process things or what the right way to process things are, because the fucked up truth is that there is no right way. And it is my choice to decide who gets to know the details of what happened. And if you don't know, it's for a reason. And if I wanted you to know, you would have known by now. So please don't make this about yourself. Please don't ask me about this. Please don't make any guesses about who could be involved. Just please don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. I know that that's a really hard thing to ask of you, because the concern comes from a place of love, and I really appreciate that, but just try to understand that this isn't your trauma to deal with. And I hope that if you're an outsider listening to this and you're currently dealing with a loved one who refuses to open up to you about something that happened to them, I hope that this can maybe provide some clarity, and you can start to accept that the person you're dealing with has chosen to not open up to you for a reason. And I hope you can respect that decision, because it takes a lot of work to get to that place. Dealing with not telling everybody close to me is almost harder than the actual thing that happened to me. And I know that sounds weird, but I just feel a lot of guilt. I have a lot of victim guilt. I feel a lot of guilt for not telling the people that I feel like should know. I feel guilt about talking about it right now, and that's something that I'm constantly working through. And to be honest, I don't really think I'll ever come to a place where I just feel content with my decision. I feel like this is always going to be a thing that I wrestle around with in my head, but I've accepted that. And it took a lot to get to this place. So just please respect my wishes of not wanting to discuss this outside of this video. And I hope that you also don't feel any guilt after this, because this isn't anyone's fault besides the person who did this or the person that was involved. And that is the only person to blame. I don't blame myself. I don't blame anybody who was in my life before that thinks that they could have prevented this. And also, I don't want you to look at me and see like a wounded puppy, like, don't misconstrue my willingness to open up about my trauma and depression with weakness, because I promise you that this is actually the opposite. And so much of me coming out and revealing even just a small amount of my truth is part of my healing process and the journey for me to get well and for me to be able to move into the next chapter in my life, which is healing, and I want that for myself, and I need to do this because I think that talking about mental health issues publicly on a platform, no matter how big or small, I think that it's really important, and it's really important to me. And maybe you don't understand that, but to be honest, I'm not really here to make you understand. I'm here to share my truth and ultimately just make something good out of a bad situation. And this is me kind of just reclaiming what happened to me and, in a way, owning it and turning it into something that is in my control. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but it's just part of the healing process. It's part of my healing journey, and it's just what I need to do for myself. And right now that's my priority. So I guess the only thing to do now is to get into it. But before I do, I think we're going to take an ad break because she needs to make a little money, and then we'll get into it. So enjoy whatever ad you're about to watch, and I hope it's a good one. I do want to put a trigger warning out there that I will be talking about childhood trauma. So if that's something that is triggering to you, I'm going to put a timestamp on the screen right now to show you where to fast forward to if you kind of want to just skip over this part. I'm not going to be talking any details about what happened, but I am going to just be talking about the effects surrounding childhood trauma. So go ahead and skip over if that's something that you don't want to listen to. This is going to be really hard for me to talk about, but I do want to be candid and honest, and I'm going to try and get through this the best I can. But just know that it's a very difficult thing for me to talk about, even though so much time has passed. It's a lot. So when I was 23, so 8 years ago now, I started having this really vivid dream about something that's kind of disturbing. And in my dream, I was much younger than I was at the time, and I had these dreams and they kept recurring night after night after night, and I thought it was coming up so often because I was thinking about it all the time, and it was like almost consuming me. And in this dream was someone very close to me, and one day I just felt compelled to call her and tell her about it. I kind of reached a point where I was like, this is getting ridiculous. I think I just need to offload this and get it off my chest and tell someone, even though I know it's just a stupid dream. And I'm just going to call her and be like, haha, isn't that crazy? Why would I dream about that, you know? So I called her and I told her about it, and she got really quiet and was like, I'm really sorry to tell you, but that's a memory, not a dream. And it happened. And I was confused, like, wait, what? And she was like, yeah, I was there and this happened. And I was in total disbelief, not understanding how something like that could happen to me and I wouldn't remember it. Like, it made no sense. And so that's when I really started learning about repressed memories. And to be honest, before any of this happened, if you told me about repressed memories, I would just tell you it's bullshit. Like, how could something traumatic happen to you and you not remember it? Like, you were there, were you not? How could you not remember? If you don't know anything about repressed memories, it's a pretty controversial and discredited claim that people can, not by choice, store away a traumatic experience in a part of their unconscious mind so that your normal consciousness isn't aware of it. It's a self-defense strategy. It's a coping mechanism. And there's a lot of debate within the psychology field about whether repressed memories is a legitimate thing our mind is able to do. And if it is, should they even be recovered? So it's really understudied, and there's not a whole lot of factual and scientific proof out there and studies out there regarding repressed memories from psychological trauma. And I'm not here today to try and prove anything at all, but I absolutely believe your mind can repress memories because I am living proof of it, and I have lived through it for 8 years straight now. When you're put in a situation where you feel like you're in a lot of danger, or you feel like your body and mind can't handle what you're going through, your brain protects you by allowing your conscious mind to go to a place outside of where you are. And that's exactly what I did. Because I can only remember small bits and pieces of it, and I think that's for a reason. It's something that I think about, and I still really can't believe that it happened, and I look, sometimes I can't even look at photos of me from that age because I just feel so bad for her. And it's strange because me as an adult wanting to protect a younger version of myself, it's weird, you know? But it's really hard for me to look at myself at that age and not want to just hug her and shield her from everything, because I know later on how those things will catch up to her, and she didn't do anything to deserve that. And now having a niece who there's no words to describe how that little girl changed my whole life, but it has really brought on trauma and triggers that I was not prepared for. I just want to protect her from everything, and all I see when I look at her sometimes is just this innocent little girl that's living in a world that doesn't deserve her. Like, I know of all the bad things that happen, and I want to do everything that I can to make sure that the things that happen to me don't ever happen to her. But I know that it's not my place to be that protective bubble. But I'm so scared, and I literally I can't even handle the thought of imagining if that was her and not me. It's like a pain that it's unreal, and I understand that this is totally just a projection of my trauma. It's a projection of my fears. But it's a legitimate thing that really, really sends me into a downward spiral sometimes. I think about the fact that she's so far and I can't be there to protect her. And again, that's something else that I'm working through, and this is a totally new thing that I did not see coming, but it's because I love her so much that I feel this way. And it's also resurfaced things that I've been sort of wrestling with over the last few years, because I think about the love that I have for her, and I know that, my parents have that same love for me, and it almost feels unfair that they don't know what happened. But, that's part of all of this. And dealing with that seriously has been harder than the trauma itself. And it seems so unfair, but that's kind of just my reality. In therapy, you learn ways to sort of reconnect with your inner child and find ways to tell her that she's fine. Like, we're okay. But your unconscious mind and your body carries that trauma and those memories somewhere, and it comes out in ways that are out of your control. So after, reconciling and coming to a place of acceptance that this happened to me, I started having more triggers, and I even realized why I had triggers from way before, like back in my early teen and teenage years when I was completely unaware of the truth. And I kind of just chalked it up to just one of my weird things. I didn't understand triggers back then. And it all sort of just makes sense now. And it's crazy that your body can have that sort of response to something that your mind doesn't even remember. And I've thought about trying to uncover the full truth. I've even gone to hypnotherapy, but my hypnotherapist said my mind just wouldn't let me, and maybe I would never be ready. But now I have these triggers that I don't fully understand, and I'm not going to get into what these triggers are because they're very specific and I don't feel comfortable speaking about that publicly. But that's one thing that has really opened the doors to this new chapter in my life, that is living with anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorder is actually pretty complex, but I guess in a nutshell, it's when you have a constant anxiety and worry about things at an excessive level. And it's something you can say, and I'm throwing up air quotes, that are ordinary issues that everybody deals with. But just thinking about it or thinking about having to do it or tackle it makes you so sick to your stomach and you just shut down. You have this sort of overwhelming sense of just like doom, like the world is going to end or something. And so when I have an anxiety attack, I do get physical symptoms. I have shortness of breath. I can feel my heart beating out of my chest. I get tingly fingertips. This is sort of a weirder one, but I kind of feel like my arms are these unknown masses hanging off of me that don't belong to me. And you just kind of want them gone. And I remember the first time this happened to me, I'm like looking at my hands and I'm almost thinking like, are these mine? Like, it's just so strange. So on top of that, I also get cold sweats. My vision gets blurry. Sometimes I lose my hearing and all I can hear is this like really high-pitched sound in one ear. And it's just an awful feeling. It's really similar to a panic attack, but in my experience, it's much more manageable. And when you kind of learn the right coping mechanisms, like meditation, for example, you can sort of mitigate the physical effects of them, but unfortunately, the psychological effects still linger. But I've learned how to lessen my symptoms when I feel an anxiety attack coming, and learning that was probably one of the best things that I've done for myself. Another type of disorder that my doctor has so kindly diagnosed me with is social anxiety. And I think to some extent, especially if you're an introvert, you'll have some level of social anxiety, but social anxiety disorder, I think, is a bit more elevated. You're not just shy and not wanting attention, but with a disorder, you could literally walk into a room and hear the judgments from other people in your head. And it's totally just a dialogue of all your insecurities. You can walk through a room and just hear things like, you're ugly, or that person thinks I'm stupid, or that person hates my outfit. It's stuff that is like so trivial and dumb, but you hear it and it weighs on you and it's crushing, and you feel this heightened level of self-consciousness and embarrassment that almost gets to a point where you can't breathe and you just have to leave. And even when that type of social anxiety doesn't come through, like I'm not hearing these judgments and I'm not in that place, sometimes the social disorder comes through in a way where my brain just shuts down completely. And I would say that this is one thing that has affected me the most, I think, and I would say has even affected my husband to some extent. When we're in social situations with our closest friends and family, like the people who we trust the most, I honestly just get to a point where I'm like, I'm done. I have to leave. I could be having the best time, and just with a flip of a switch, I just don't want to see or be around anyone. And it's almost like I've got this timer that starts ticking the second I'm in a social situation, and I'm like constantly worried in the back of my mind, like when, that timer's gonna go off. And when that happens, I just completely shut down, and the inner dialogue in my head is like, you're totally having an episode right now. You need to get out of it. But in my experience, it's almost impossible to get out of that mental state when you're in it. I've never been able to talk my way out of or through one of these kinds of social shutdowns. I just kind of run away, and that's what I'm doing right now. I haven't figured out a way to not have that happen, and it's been really, really frustrating. So when I say that I'm shut down, I don't mean like I'm tired and I just want to be at home and I'm feeling sorry for myself. You literally just lose interest in everything. Like, I don't care what anyone is talking about. I have no interest in being a part of any conversation. Someone could be talking directly to me, but I won't absorb a single word they've just said. I just want to be alone. And it's a frustrating place to be in when you're surrounded by your favorite people, but at the same time, your mind is telling you not to care. And it's just this resounding, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. And when you lose interest, it's like you're not even there anymore mentally. There's just this quietness and silence in your mind. And I feel guilty because sometimes my husband is affected by this, because I'll just give him a look or I'll cling on to him and he just knows that, we've got to go. And it puts him in a tough spot, and I do feel bad. And that's why I don't really care when he's out with his friends without me, because I think it's just better this way, And he's voiced that I really can't opt out of every social thing. There's only so many excuses we can make. And eventually it'll just get to a point where I'm letting this disorder dictate my life and potentially ruin my relationships. So I hope that if you struggle to understand what someone with social anxiety goes through, that this can maybe sort of paint a picture a little better, because I can guarantee you that the person living with it is just as frustrated and confused as you are, if not more. So just be patient and just know that it's a lot deeper than a lot of people think. So with social anxiety, it's not just face-to-face social situations that can trigger it. It actually applies to social media too, and just basically any form of communication. Like if you've ever sent me a DM or a text message or just initiated any kind of contact and I never replied, it's because I can't. I don't know why, but I just can't. And my socials grew a bit during the pandemic, and this is the most public attention I've had my entire life, so I'm still kind of adjusting, but my DMs do get pretty jam-packed if I don't try and keep up with it, or I don't make an effort to keep up with it. And don't get me wrong, I love these conversations and I love these connections, and I'm not saying to not message me, but if you ever wonder why I never replied, or maybe replied months later, it's because I just couldn't open your message at the time. Like if I reply to DMs and I see that the other person opened it right away, oh my gosh, I seriously panic and I just exit out and I throw my phone, like I'm gone. It feels ridiculous and I know it's odd, but it is what it is, and I just hope that this never translated as me being rude or you thinking it's something you said or that I just don't like you. It's not that at all. I'm just dealing with things behind the scenes that I guess now you're aware of. I'm asked pretty often why I don't show my face on YouTube, and it's simple. I'm just not comfortable and I'm not confident. And I don't feel like at this point in my life I could sit in front of a camera and talk to millions of strangers on the internet without being harshly criticized and judged. I always try and channel my inner Bretman Rock energy, his I don't give a fuck energy. But to be honest, I think part of being human is that usually we do give a fuck, and it's hard to not give a fuck. And I use humor as a coping mechanism and a self-defense strategy. And it's my way of externalizing and validating my insecurities and speaking it so loudly that it sounds ridiculous. And over time, I sort of desensitized myself to these negative thoughts and insecurities and kind of just put like a big clown face over it, to the point where I can't take it seriously anymore because it's just so funny. And it's empowering and it's liberating to kind of reclaim something that used to make you feel like you were going to break. And it's a reminder to myself that my insecurities aren't my reality. And, I'm working through it. It's always a work in progress. And I'm not sitting here today telling you how I overcame anxiety disorder. I'm just learning how to cope and function despite having these disorders and not letting it define me and become who I am. My disorders and my trauma is not my identity, and I refuse to have that be my identity. But it's something you really have to fight for and be willing to do the work for, to still have your sense of self. And it's hard when you kind of feel like you're getting lost in it. But if you just, you just keep telling yourself, like, it's going to be okay, and I just have to keep doing the work, I feel like you get there, because despite, still kind of going through really bad, bouts of depression and anxiety, it's much better than where I was last year. And if I keep going upward and I keep working on it, like, who knows where I'll be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I think it's important to note that I don't really have my hopes up, if that sounds weird. I haven't set the bar too high. I'm being very forgiving with myself, and I'm not really holding myself to any expectations. I'm just kind of taking it day by day. Last year was a show for the entire world. COVID-19 hit, and my life was just flipped upside down in more ways than just learning how to live through a flu that was taking people with weak immune systems, aka me. And that brought on so much more anxiety. And I was actually also formally diagnosed with depression. So I want to talk about that, but I also want to take another ad break because I'm going to recharge my voice box, because honestly, I am running on fumes right now. So I will be right back. All right, so now we are talking about depression. I feel like there's this general idea that depression is just sadness, because I think that's the way that depression is portrayed in the movies. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when I was really ignorant about mental disorders and mental health issues, I straight up thought, like, get over it. What's the big deal, And that's just shallow and closed-minded thinking. Like, depression isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's a spectrum, and the way that translates is different on every person. There are emotional, psychological, and even physical effects and symptoms that come with depression, and a lot of people don't know that. I actually don't feel sadness with my depression. I just feel this like overwhelming sense of nothing. It's just this hollowness, and I almost wish when I'm in these episodes I could feel sad, because if I could feel sad, at least I'm feeling something. And I'm sure for people who have it the other way around are thinking, I would rather feel nothing than feel sadness. But for me, when I'm in that episode, I just hope for any kind of feeling. And I have never self-harmed, but experiencing this has helped me understand why it happens. You just want to feel something, even if it is pain. but I do get restless, easily agitated. I don't eat. I'm tired and lethargic, no motivation. And my husband is like the most loving, understanding, and supportive partner when it comes to this stuff, but sometimes I can't reciprocate that love and appreciation back to him. And it's hard because I start feeling like I'm a bad partner and that I don't deserve him. And again, I know these are just insecurities and projections, but that's just, it comes with it too. And I have a hard time thinking. I get easily confused. I'm forgetful. And all of those things combined make you feel like you're just about to fucking snap. There are even more physical symptoms too. I get really bad headaches, back pain, nausea, and I already take way more pain medications than I would say the average person my age. I take medications for health issues I have, like scoliosis and polycystic ovary syndrome. So I'm just kind of always in pain. And now with depression, I'm also getting these like gnarly headaches, these migraines, these weakened muscles, and the list just goes on and on. And it took a really long time for me to accept that these were symptoms of depression. In 2019 and 2020, I was literally going to the doctor almost every month because I was convinced I had some sort of terminal illness because I was getting so sick. And test after test after test, just all for my doctor and therapist to tell me that it was depression. And my doctor was literally like, we need to stop running these tests on you, you know? And I just couldn't understand it. I was like, okay, I will accept that I am depressed, but why would that hurt my back? And I can kind of understand now why people who aren't depressed or don't have any experience with depression or just don't know about depression to think that people who do are just being like sad and overly dramatic and are unable to cope with everyday stress, you know. But there's so much more to it than that. It's so complex and there are like so many layers to peel back. So along with that, I feel like another misconception about depression is that people with depression are always depressed or are always in a depressive episode or in a depressive state. And that's just not true. Like, I have plenty of moments and long periods of feeling really, really good. And I mentioned I wanted to talk about this now because it was still fresh, and that's because I literally just came out of a 5-day long depressive episode, and that one totally caught me off guard because I hadn't had a depressive episode since I started my medication last year, and I basically just got super comfortable. I was like, yay, I'm fixed, you know, like I'm healed. So I mean, I still had like the day-to-day fatigue or lack of motivation or whatever, but not to the point where I'm like crippled in bed. I was still functional. I was able to get stuff done. And when I got on medication, that's when I started working again. And I started the YouTube. I got more active on Instagram, and I was just kind of getting back into the swing of things and feeling really good about myself. And then just one day it all came crashing down and I was like, I hate everything. When I was first diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorder, I was warned that, you know, my medication wasn't going to fix everything magically. And even if I was or wasn't on medication, I would likely be sort of dealing with this probably for the rest of my life. They said, you know, there is a chance that you could just come out of this and not deal with it again and just be totally fine. But just be prepared. And I was pretty hopeful that this whole anxiety and depression thing was really just a product of the pandemic and not being able to see my family and all of those things. But through therapy, I mean, it kind of made me understand that, like, my past trauma has a lot to do with a lot of the triggers that I have now that is very much correlated to my depression. So, yeah, I just got really down because I was thinking of weaning off my medication. But after I got hit with that episode, I definitely got knocked down a peg, and I realized that I am nowhere near even thinking about getting off my meds. And it's just a reminder that, I'm like always in a delicate state and I need to take care of myself. Someone asked me what a depressive episode feels like and how I get out of them. And the only thing I can explain what my depressive episode feels like is what I said earlier about just having this like looming, heavy, indescribable feeling of nothingness. Like nothing matters. Nothing I do matters. Nothing I say matters. None of my goals matter. I just don't matter. And it's a really dark and isolating place to be in. You don't want to shower. You don't want to take care of yourself. You don't care what you look like. Last year, when I was really in the thick of my depression, I didn't even want to look in the mirror. I hated seeing myself. I was disgusted with myself. And I recently started feeling like that again, and I just had every negative thought in the world about myself, and even contemplated like what work I could get done to my face and body so that I could just feel better about myself when I looked in the mirror. And that's not judgment on people that do get work done, but that's not who I am. This is going to be really embarrassing to admit and just really gross, but during a really bad episode that I had last year, I didn't shower for I think close to 3 weeks. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, I'm so perfect and I don't smell. No, I smelled terrible, and my scalp was in so much pain from it being in a bun for so long. And I can vividly remember just like sobbing in the bathroom as I was undoing it because I was in so much pain. It hurt so bad. And I just wasn't well. I wasn't okay. And part of my depression is that I just stopped taking care of myself. Like sometimes I don't even want to brush my teeth, and sometimes I don't. If you know me, you know I love taking care of my teeth. I floss like 3 times a day. I love flossing. I love brushing my teeth. It's so fun. But when I get into those moods, I just don't care. And it feels like self-care is just a waste of time. And in order to care for myself, I need to be around a mirror. And that's the last thing I want. But to circle back and answer the question of how I get out of a depressive episode, honestly, it's not like there's one thing I can do where every time I do it, it'll snap me out of it, It's not like with my scoliosis, when I feel that like dull ache in the curve in my spine, I know exactly what stretch to do and how to make it crack so that it doesn't hurt anymore. And I mean, unfortunately, I don't have something like that for depressive episodes, but one thing I do that ironically is like the one thing I hate the most, and it's taking a shower and just taking the time to like pamper myself. And when I take a shower, I like really freaking take a shower. I scrub the crap out of my body. I shave my entire body, and I joke about this on Instagram often, but I'm not kidding. I do that. And there's just something about shaving my body and emerging out of that shower silky smooth. It's like I'm unstoppable. So a shower is usually my first step. And then I'll do other things like face mask, foot soak, manicure and pedicure, and I just make everything look really cute. And then I eat. When I'm in a depressive episode, I don't eat. I know that some people binge eat, but I'm the opposite. Like the thought of food and the smell of food, it just makes me sick. Sometimes the only way that I'll eat is if my husband literally forces me to, or if I'm like on the verge of fainting because I haven't eaten in 2 days or 3 days or something. So, after I'm all pampered, I just make a meal. And sometimes that meal can just be a salad or cucumbers with kimchi or something and rice. I swear to you guys, one day I am going to write a coffee table book called Cucumbers Saved My Life. I just love cucumbers so much. They're so yummy. But anyway, something light is important because when you go from not eating for so long to just having a like big heavy meal, you just feel so sick, and then it really turns you off to wanting to eat another meal. So something light, just something to get some sustenance. And you guys know how much I love junk food and how bad I eat sometimes, but my first go-to meal is usually something healthy. And you don't have to like torture yourself by eating plain oatmeal or something. Just like even a smoothie or a yogurt with chia seeds and like some fruit and toasted bread is like really all you need to come back to life. My mom used to make me toasted bread, and she would put some honey on it and then sprinkle a little bit of sugar, and that is like my comfort food. When I have that, I feel like I'm back with my mom again, and I'm getting emotional. I just miss her so much. I haven't seen her for over a year, and I'm just not used to being away from her this long. My mom is like the center of my universe, and she doesn't know this, but when I get out of my depressive episodes, usually the first thing I make is that toast. And I know it seems so funny to get emotional about it, but when I make that meal and it's like the first thing that I've had in so long, I just feel like I'm with her, and she's taking care of me, and she's like just telling me you're okay. And I feel so funny about crying about toast. Sorry. It's just that my mom, every time I talk about my mom, I just get so emotional because she's like my best friend and one of my favorite people on this planet, and she's gotten me through so many hard things that I've had to navigate in my life, and I'm just so thankful for her, and I just don't want her to listen to this and feel like she has to be concerned about me or feel any guilt about what I talked about earlier. And so a lot of these tears just come from a place of just like so much love and admiration for my mom. And I guess I just don't ever want her to feel like she failed me. Sorry, I have to take a break. That was a lot. I just needed to like take a breather because honestly, filming this video has taken so much out of me emotionally, and I don't think that I will be able to do this for a long time. I know that I talk about mental health a lot on my socials, and it's something that I'm very vocal about and that I advocate for, and I want to be there for other people and just help them understand that they're not alone. And it takes a lot out of you though, because you always have to be reminded of your trauma and your triggers and all of the other things that just make you explode into tears after not crying for who knows how long. But anyway, without getting too much into it again, because I don't want to cry, yeah, I just always get emotional with my mom. She's just everything to me, and I just want her to understand that she has done just an amazing job, and there's nothing that she could have done different, and there's nothing that I would have had her done different. Like, she did everything right to me, and she can do no wrong in my eyes. And so anyway, going back to what I was saying, feeding yourself. Comfort meals are just really good. So I make that toast that my mom makes, or I make stuff that just make me feel like I'm at home, and usually that's some kind of Filipino dish. I don't crave Filipino food really often, but I notice that I do when I'm homesick. And luckily my mom taught me how to make some of my few favorite dishes, and I tend to make those when I just kind of want to feel closer to home. So yeah, that's sort of how I just start to navigate out of a depressive episode. So this brings me to the final topic that I wanted to talk about before I get into a handful of Q&As. I sound so stuffy now and congested, but I'm going to get through this last part, and then honestly I need to take a break because today has just been a lot. I've been filming this all day. I've been going back and forth, recording and deleting and editing, because I feel like I need to filter it so much, just because I'm so worried about what my family and friends are gonna think. But I don't know, we'll see how it comes together. But I need to take a break a little bit before the Q&As, because honestly, I don't cry that much, but when I do cry, guys, it hurts. It hurts my face to cry. I'm not built to cry. It's I feel this really strong sensation, this stinging or burning in my head and my eyes and my nose. It's so uncomfortable to cry. I hate crying. So I don't want to cry anymore today, because I do have to film something tomorrow and I'm gonna be all puffy. So okay, the final thing I'm going to talk about is how depression and anxiety ties in with the plant hobby. And if you're watching this video, maybe you're a plant parent and maybe you're not, but if you are, you know that plants are like children, and you have to take care of them or they don't do well. So in 2020, when I was sort of at the peak of my depression and anxiety and not really understanding it that much, I would find ways to boost serotonin in my brain so that I didn't have to feel that nothingness anymore. And a huge part of that was buying plants. And unfortunately in 2020, that's when the bubble was massive and plants were so expensive. And I mean, you guys know it was so bad, and it's still bad, but it was really bad last year. But because I was desperate to feel something, anything, I was just buying like crazy. I didn't care. So every spare dollar I had at the end of every month, after everything was paid for, it just went to plants. And it's nothing quite beats that rush of getting a brand new plant. It's just so exciting and you just feel so happy. But then as soon as that initial rush fades, it's back to chasing the next high and looking for the next plant. And there was this time where I didn't find any joy in caring for plants at all. I just wanted to buy them. And it was getting visibly ridiculous because our apartment was being overrun by plants. And I wasn't just bringing home small plants. I was like renting U-Hauls to bring home huge plants, and it became a problem. And because I was depressed, I had no desire or motivation to care for them. So I would just let days and weeks go by and just watch them die. And I had no idea who needed to be repotted. I don't remember the last time any plant got watered. I just didn't care. And then one day I noticed that several leaves in a corner of my house had thrips damage. And if you know thrips, you know that having a full outbreak is basically a death sentence. And sure enough, almost every single plant had thrips, and I just reached my breaking point. I grabbed 2 massive trash bags and I just started chucking plants in there while like sobbing my eyes out, not understanding how or why I let things get so bad, and I was feeling so guilty and so bad about myself. And it was just a reality check that my collection was too big. It was too much, and I was using plants as a high, and that wasn't okay because that's not why I got into plants in the first place. And as much as I really don't want to be sort of lumped in with that group of people that were doing the same thing last year, at the end of the day I was, and I think that we all were just kind of coping with the pandemic and the year 2020 the best we knew how. I think at the time I thought plants was the only thing that was keeping me from like completely losing it. And to a certain extent, that was true. But I will say that there was a part of it too that was contributing to the decline of my mental health, because I'm looking around, seeing dying plants and thinking, like, you're a failure and you did this. You did this to yourself. This is your fault. And it took a while for me to realize that I wasn't a failure. I wasn't really doing anything wrong. I wasn't a bad plant parent. I just had too many plants. And, a few people asked in the Q&A how I managed to take care of plants during a depressive episode, or just with the state of my mental health, which is always up and down. And people say this all the time, and it's going to sound really cliche, but it's true. And that's that you can't take care of the things and the people around you if you don't take care of yourself first. And if you try and put everything else first, at some point it's going to catch up to you. So it just makes sense to put yourself first if you can. I know that not everybody has that luxury. I know that I definitely did have that luxury. I don't have kids. I don't have anyone depending on me besides my dog. I have a husband that was supporting me in so many ways, financially, emotionally, mentally, and I had the time to put myself first. So I understand that not everybody can do that, but if you can, I think that's so important. And I think that our society manipulates you and kind of conditions you into thinking you're supposed to fix everything around you first, so that there's this facade that everything's fine. And then when you have time, that's when you take care of yourself. And I just don't feel like that's how it should be. So to answer the question simply, you can't take care of your plants at your best capacity and ability if you're not in a healthy mental, psychological, and physical state. It's just not possible. And if you're not willing to part with some plants that you're not super in love with, it's just kind of expected that plants are going to die, and you just have to be prepared for that. And if that's the road you take, I know it's easier said than done, but try to not be so hard on yourself, because I know that for some people, getting rid of plants is actually harder than just watching them die in your care, and that's fine too. For me, I was okay with selling plants and letting them go. I didn't really have that much sentimental attachment to them. But if that's not what you're comfortable doing, then, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong. But just be prepared. You only have so much time in the day, and you can only stretch yourself so thin. So setting an expectation of yourself to have everything taken care of the way you would when you're feeling your best is just setting yourself up for disappointment. So I guess where I am now with mental health and plants, I'm in a place where I know that plants do help my mental health. And sometimes my plants are the only thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm grateful to have this hobby and to be a part of a community that's just like so loving and uplifting and like-minded. And I've never been a part of something like that before. And it's like really magical in so many ways. And, I think that plants are such a great thing to have if you have issues with your mental health. But something that you have to consider with this hobby is like, how many plants can you actually take care of without it being a burden? Because there's a very fine line where this hobby can like quickly become your nightmare. And, it's not like other hobbies where you collect Pokemon cards or, you just crochet or something. Every single plant in your house needs you at some point. So you can't just keep collecting and collecting without adding to your workload. And at some point last year, I was almost ready to get rid of every single plant in the house. I was like, no, I'm done. These are giving me more stress than anything, and I don't really know why I'm still doing it. But I'm glad that I was able to sort that out and realize that it wasn't my plants that were the problem. It was the amount that I had. And while I still find myself sometimes feeling envious while scrolling Instagram and seeing these like super lush indoor jungles, I remind myself that it's just not feasible or practical for me. And I get complimented a lot on my plant shelf and just kind of how I've styled plants in my home, but if you've actually been here or you've really taken the time to look at the plants in my house, I don't have a lot. They're all very segregated into one area that makes it easy for me to care for. I try and practice sort of a balance of minimalism while still being able to have like my little jungle. And a reason why I've invested so much money into my Exoterra setups and have prioritized putting them in enclosed environments that, where it can sustain itself and go longer periods without needing me, it's because I understand that with the state of my mental health, I just can't give it the amount of time that I used to. And I've also come to terms with the fact that I just can't have all the plants. And I feel like I'm just really appreciative now of the plants that I do have, and the ones that are in my collection now are just really special to me. And I'm able to be happy for others and appreciate plants that I don't have without ever adding it to my collection. Mostly because I know what it's like to be overwhelmed with too many plants, and I don't want to be back in that place again. I feel like a lot of us can agree that this plant hobby is kind of our safe haven and our escape from things that, we don't want to deal with, or our way to sort of minimize the stress and anxiety that we're experiencing in our lives. And I don't think that the amount of plants that you have should hinder that, because we have like a really special relationship with our plants that maybe other people don't understand. And, a lot of people call us crazy, but like we get it. So if I have any advice, it would be to try and practice gratitude. I know it's pretty easy to get sucked into the world of rare and exotic aroids, especially with a platform like Instagram, where hundreds and hundreds of plants are just at the tip of your fingers, but just getting to a place where you're like, yeah, I can appreciate that and just move on Like, it's honestly so liberating. Since last year, I've cut my collection down by so much, and while I wish I had more plants to photograph for Instagram and watch grow, on the other hand, I'm so grateful to have time to YouTube now because I really love doing this. It's exhausting and it's tiring, and sometimes I'm like, what am I doing this for? But I really do love it. And also just like laying in bed for an extra hour on the weekends or binge watching Netflix with my husband and Pudge. Those are things I never really appreciated before, and now it's become such a big part of my life that I can't really imagine going back to how it used to be. And I used to really glamorize the idea of the hustle and just always, feeling like I needed to be busy all the time. Like every single minute should be productive from the moment you wake up until you sleep. And I lived like that for a really, really long time because, like I mentioned in the beginning, I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18. And I was forced to grow up and forced to work really hard because if I didn't, I wouldn't eat or I couldn't pay rent. And at some point, I must have identified with that lifestyle, and that just became who I am and honestly who I wanted to be. I was proud of it and I flaunted it and I loved it. And I used to have a swimwear business in California, and I was working from like 7 a.m. until 4 a.m. some mornings. And I worked really hard to get that brand off the ground, and I'm not saying I would take it back because it was successful and the money I made from that business allowed me the financial freedom of packing up and moving to Canada and starting a totally new life in a country where I had no roots, and I'm proud of that. Like, I would never want the lifestyle that I had back because that version of me wasn't healthy in a lot of different ways and never prioritized taking care of herself. And even though like mentally I was in a much better place back then, I think I still wouldn't take it back because at least now I'm just fully aware of what I need to do for myself to make sure that I'm staying healthy and well. And I know the things that I need to do to be like the best version of myself for myself and also for the people that rely on me. Okay, so we are kind of getting towards the end here. I think that I'm going to close off this video with answering 5 questions. 4 of the questions were the most frequently asked, and then I just added one that I really liked and think it's important to talk about. I'm not the most knowledgeable person on this topic, but I do think it's important to open up the conversation. Before I get into the first question, we're just gonna go into the last planned ad break because Pudge's food is very expensive. So we'll take a little break and then I will come back. Hi, welcome back. Okay, so getting into the first question. When do you know when to ask for help? I like this question because it came up in a therapy session once, and she asked me if I could, give a piece of advice to my past self. What would it be? And honestly, the first thing that came to mind was that I just wish I saw a therapist or at least a counselor before things got bad. And I think one of the goals of speaking about mental health on my platforms is to normalize talking to mental health professionals on a regular basis. Just to check in, I don't feel like it should take a panic attack or an anxiety attack to have to speak to someone. We're all stressed and we all have our issues we're dealing with or without depression. And I just feel like everyone should speak to someone. And I wish it was normalized because I feel like there's still this stigma around seeing a therapist or a psychologist, like it somehow means you're weak or something, and that's not true. I really struggled with this with my dad, who was dealing with some mental health issues too, and I was just trying to tell him, there's like no shame around having to get help. There really is no shame in trying to take care of yourself. If anything, you should be proud of yourself that you're taking that leap to get well. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that not only is getting help for yourself beneficial for your mental health, but it's also beneficial for everyone else around you. Like there are certain things that you do when you're anxious and depressed that can, to put it simply, it can be burdensome for the people around you that don't know how to help you. And talk therapy is great with your loved ones, but there's only so much that they can say to you. But the rest of the work you have to do for yourself. And I'm not saying that, it's sad to like throw a pity party for yourself, but again, it's kind of just a waste of time if you're kind of going in the same circle over and over and over again. And if you really care and love the people that are in your circle, getting help is one way that you can show them that you love them and you care, because they want to see you well. They don't like seeing you like this. And I can say that I've experienced this personally, not with me needing to get help, but with someone else that I wanted to get help, and they still haven't gotten help. And I just wish they would, because I've tried to help, but I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I can only tell you it's okay, and I support you so many times until it's like we both become a broken record. So, getting help it's just good in so many ways, and I don't really see why you wouldn't. I can understand that it can be costly for some people depending on where you live, but even just can sometimes be enough to like hold you over or put things into perspective. And if you're even contemplating whether you're at a point where it's worth it to speak to someone, I say do it. There's no level of sadness or anxiety you should feel like you need to reach in order to talk to someone. I think a lot of us are conditioned to feel like we have to keep pushing ourselves until we're about to break, and that's when it's time to take care of yourself. And to me, that's really sad. So if you're considering getting help, do it. And there's so many resources now where you can literally like text a therapist or just jump on a video call really quick, and you don't even need to make that effort to drive to an office and sit face to face if that's not what you're comfortable with. But taking that first step and getting help is so much more empowering than I could describe to you. When I first got help, I really thought it was going to be an embarrassing thing. I thought that I was going to hate it, but I got off of that call and I felt really good. You might, it might take some time to find a therapist or a counselor that is good for you. I know I've spoken to many therapists in the past where I was like, nope, this is not it. Like, we don't jive. So don't give up right away if, you get a therapist that maybe you don't have a connection with. Give it another try, because there's so many out there and it's just a matter of finding the right one. The next question is, what is the best thing your partner can do while you're having an episode? I think that first and foremost, it's really important to be vocal to your partner about how you're feeling. Don't rely on them to read body language and to read your mind and to just expect to understand where you are mentally. Because oftentimes, day after day after day, the same schedule, it gets really easy to kind of look past that, and they could be totally unaware of the fact that you're totally going through it, especially if you have like functional depression where you like really force yourself to just put on a brave face and kind of just make it work, and you just resume business as normal. And especially if you have kids. I can't relate because I don't have kids, but I watch my sister be a mom to my niece, and she doesn't have the luxury of turning it off, she just keeps going. And if she stops, then, what happens with her kid? So some people just work through it. But people like me who don't have those kinds of obligations and responsibility, just shut down. So what I do is I'm just very vocal with Vince. When I was in the last depressive episode, on day 1, I literally texted him and was like, I'm having a depressive episode and I'm not doing good. And so at least he's aware that when he comes home from work, that's what he's walking into. Because our normal thing is he gets home from work, it's the hugs and kisses, how was your day, catching up. But when I'm kind of in a mood, I don't want to talk. And to be honest, I don't even want to hear about what happened at work or how your day was, because like I said, I don't care about anything when I'm in a depressive episode. And that could inadvertently kind of make you guys like fight or pitch you guys against each other, because now you're coming off as rude or careless or something, and that's not what it is. You're just, you're kind of dealing with something. So don't be afraid to communicate with your partner and tell them how you're feeling. So me personally, the best thing that Vince does for me and can do for me when I'm in an episode is just help me, help me around the house, take on responsibilities that I usually do without me having to ask you. And he does that. Like I'm not like a housewife, but I'm like a housewife. He goes to work, I work from home, I tidy up the house, I cook dinners, I do laundry, I do the whole housewife thing. And it's not like he makes me, it's just the role that I've assumed, and I'm good with it. I like taking care of us that way. But when I'm in an episode, I can't be that like 100%. So, if there's dishes in the sink or the dishwasher's full, or he sees that I'm not getting out of bed, he'll wash the dishes. He'll do Pudge's walk that I was supposed to do. He'll feed Pudge. He'll just do things that I would have normally done without me having to ask. He'll order food for me so that I don't have to cook. Just things like that. Just kind of showing your partner that you care and you see them and you recognize that they're in a state, and you don't expect them to kind of just turn it off because they're home. And so I also think it's very important for partners, and I'm not like, a marriage counselor, whatever, I'm not like a love doctor, but one thing that I think is really important in any partnership is understanding each other's love language, because I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. And I'm not going to get into love languages. You can pause this video and Google it and sort of get into it. They have tests that you can take where it tells you what your love language is. And I totally recommend that both of you guys take this test so that you understand how each of you give and receive love. So that can be super helpful if your partner's having an episode. Like, you'll know what they need from you in, around that time. So I think that's the best advice I can give for this question. The next question is, how do you deal with a partner who has anxiety and depression? I think that the most important part is understanding anxiety and depression, like what it is, all the forms it takes, the symptoms, and just kind of trying to relate to them the best you can, because Vince is, I don't know how he does it. Vince is just a happy guy, and he has not had the easiest upbringing either. Vince has been through some shit, and somehow he's just processed the trauma he's been through, and he's fine. Like, he did go to counseling, I believe, when he was younger, but just as an adult, he's just so functional and fine and happy and optimistic and just always ready to go. And I admire that about him, and I'm kind of jealous a little bit that I'm such a hot mess, and then I just have this partner who's just 100% all the time. But even though he doesn't know what it's like to be depressed or anxious, he listens to me when I'm telling him how I feel, and it's active listening. It's not just yeah, okay, oh, I'm sorry, I hope you feel better. It's he drops everything, he puts his phone down, he looks into my eyes, and he tries to feel the pain that I'm feeling. And for me, that's just him trying to understand already makes me feel so much better and so much more supported. And then now he just kind of understands the things that I need. So communication is a huge thing. Sometimes they don't even want you to ask what they need. Sometimes that can trigger them more, and they just want to be left alone. So I would say just try and be as supportive as possible, be as patient as possible, because sometimes I feel like I'm just unreasonably depressed or unreasonably anxious, and I feel like a burden to Vince a lot of the times. And he never makes me feel that way. He is always telling me how much he appreciates me and how brave I am for kind of dealing with the things that I'm dealing with, and being so open and vulnerable about it to complete strangers. So he's just very supportive in that way, and he just makes sure that I'm eating. He makes sure that I'm taking care of myself, that I'm healthy. And he gives me that push when, it's yep, it's time for a shower now, or yeah, you gotta eat. I'm not gonna let you sleep for the 8th hour straight. You're gonna get up now. And sometimes, honestly, it's fucking annoying, and I'm like, dude, just leave me here. I'm fine. I don't want to eat. I just want to sleep. But he understands that I can't live that way. And he makes it a priority to make sure that he's taking care of me. So everybody is different. Everybody's anxiety and depression is different. But I would say if you're able to just relate to them as much as possible, just really listen to them when they're ready to talk to you, and just try and support them in any way possible, even if it means helping them make that appointment with a counselor, or reminding them to take their medications, or just positive affirmations, and just, a quick flyby, I love you. Things like that can make such a difference, because when you're anxious and depressed, you just want to be home. You just want to be in the space that in the space that you're comfortable with. And sometimes having a partner in that space kind of intrudes on that a little bit. But if you know that your partner is aware of everything you're feeling, it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of coexist with one another when you guys are so different. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. The last 2 questions are medication related, and I wanted to save this for last because I think that talking about medications also sort of has a bad stigma around it. but I am pro medication and pro science because this has helped me so much in so many different ways. So right now I'm taking 2 different medications for my anxiety and depression. The first one is lorazepam, I think that's what it's called. The trade name or whatever is Ativan. And then the second one that I'm taking is apoescitalopram, and that one that's my antidepressant. I'm on a very low dose of both of them. I actually only take the Ativan when I'm having a panic attack. So in the 5-day depressive episode, I only needed to take it once, and that was because I could start to feel myself getting a panic attack. And it usually starts with the fact that I can't breathe. I don't know if you guys have noticed in my YouTube videos, and I'm always saying this, oh, I'm so out of breath. It's not because I'm working out and I'm tired. It's just with my anxiety, I'm always out of breath. I can't breathe and I can't get a good breath in. And this actually started when I was in 5th grade. We're just going to go back a little bit. I had a teacher and she was awful. She was so scary and so mean. She was so mean to me. She was so mean to everyone. She used to call us stupid. She used to actually be very verbally abusive. And I got so much anxiety in 5th grade going to school every day. I dreaded going to school. And I started developing these breathing issues. And my mom noticed it, and she's just why are you always out of breath? How come you can't breathe? And I told her that I can't breathe when my teacher or when I'm around my teacher. And I basically just developed this slight anxiety when I was super, super young because of this abusive teacher. And I've had that breathing issue since then, and it's really awful. So sometimes when I can't catch a breath, I start hyperventilating, and this happens way more often than I wish it did, but that's kind of my new normal now. So if I can't get my breathing under control, I spiral, and it usually results in me fainting. A way I've dealt with this part of my anxiety is, you know how on TV when characters are panicking and they breathe into a paper bag? There's a really funny scene when Janice does it in Friends when she gets caught cheating on Chandler with her ex-husband. But yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real technique that you can do to help balance out your breathing during an anxiety or panic attack. And basically, when you're hyperventilating and you're exhaling too much air, it decreases the CO2 in your blood, and low CO2 levels causes an imbalance in your body, leads to low oxygen levels, which leads to lower blood and oxygen flow to your brain, hence why people usually end up passing out. So I do that, and another thing I do is meditate. And meditation doesn't work for me when I'm having a panic attack, but it does work for the anxiety attacks. And learning how to meditate takes a lot of practice to really know how to quiet your mind and just focus on your breathing. But it was a practice that was really worth it because honestly, it saved me so many 911 calls. So I highly recommend learning how to meditate if you don't know how to do that. The only thing that really worked for me before I was prescribed Ativan for my panic attacks was laying in bed with Vince while he rubs my back or scratches my back, just so that I calm down and I'm able to regulate my breathing again. And while he does this, I'm literally chanting in my head over and over again, this is just a panic attack, or this is just an anxiety attack. And you sort of just have to psych yourself out and remind yourself that you're not dying. You're just hyperventilating. You're in your head. Wow, okay, I totally went off on a tangent, but yeah, going back to medications, I'm on those two, and there's a bit of an adjustment period. I'm not gonna lie. For 6 months, I was like miserable, and it was the worst 6 months of my life. I would call my doctor every few weeks, like, I feel worse now than when I started, and like, I don't think this is the right medication for me. And he just kept advising me to push through that cloud and to see it through. And I'm really glad I did, because I'm like fully regulated on my medicine now, and it's been really helpful. I need to go off on another tangent again before I go back to the question, just because I feel like I was talking about it, and I think that I need to provide some clarity for people who have questions, and that is how to differentiate a panic attack from an anxiety attack, because they're not the same thing. So for me, panic attacks are much scarier. They're usually unexpected and are really heavy on the physical symptoms. You know, the shortness of breath, the rapid heart rate, body numbness, dizziness, nausea, basically everything that your body feels during a fight or flight response. And they're like these really short bursts of these symptoms, but it's really intense and you just don't see them coming. Whereas an anxiety attack sort of has a slower buildup and are triggered by something, whether that's like anticipating something that makes you feel uncomfortable, like if you have a social event coming up that you're really dreading going to, or like a presentation at work or something, or just having one of your triggers set off. You know it's coming because it's very mental, and it just builds gradually until you're having a full-on attack. And oftentimes that attack can come after hours and hours or even days of just high anxiety. So the reason why anxiety attacks are less scary for me is because there aren't so many of those physical symptoms, and I know how to teach myself ways, or I know how to get myself to come back down to a good level. And for the last time, to circle back to the question, I'm not really sure how birth control is connected with depression and anxiety, or how that even interacts with medications. I have read that there is depression and anxiety linked to certain birth controls. And I've actually read that some help with it and some exacerbate it or make it worse. So I am on birth control. I'm on a medicine called Triceralow, and I'll plug in the actual name of it, not the trade name on the screen, because there's no way I'm going to be able to say this. But I take birth control because I don't want to get pregnant right now, but I have polycystic ovary syndrome and endometrial cysts, and I need this birth control so that I'm not like crippled for 2 weeks out of the month. Otherwise, the pain is just so bad, and I'm just kind of like inhaling pain medication, and it starts to hurt my liver, and it's a whole thing. So birth control has been really helpful for me in that way, and I'm not quite sure how it's interacting with my medications. I did talk to my doctor about it, and he said that there shouldn't be any interactions, but I don't really know. I wish that I could answer this question better, but I did want to include it in this video in case there are any, like pharmacists out there, or doctors, psychologists, whoever that might know the answer to this and can provide some better insight. But yeah, that is my experience with antidepressants and birth control. I think we have finally made it to the end, and this has felt like a marathon, and I have run a marathon before, so I know what that feels like. And can you hear Pudge's little footsteps? I think the only way to end this video is with my sidekick, Pudge. Pudge. Hi. Come here. You want to sit on my lap? Come here. Oh, you sweet little thing. You want to say hi to all your friends? I've got Pudge here, who is in desperate need of a bath. I think we both need a bath. Do you want to say anything? How are you feeling today? Are you okay? You weren't really a part of this video, huh? But did you want to say anything to the people? It was really emotionally... Oh, I know, Pudge. It was very emotionally draining, and I just hope that this video can provide some insight into understanding anxiety and depression if maybe you really didn't know about it. It's about trying to break the stigma around people who have anxiety and depression and getting rid of that embarrassment that you might feel. Like I said, I'm not going to allow depression and anxiety to become my identity, but while it's a part of my life, I am going to be very vocal about it. I'm so happy that the discussion about mental health has been more normalized. I mentioned earlier that I had a talk with my dad, of all people, about mental health and depression and anxiety, and that was honestly a crazy conversation to have because I've had a really tumultuous relationship with my dad growing up. I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and he was really hard on me, and I resented him for a lot of reasons and for many years, and it took a lot for us to get to the point we're at now. And I think my dad is listening because he says he watches all my videos. Hi, Dad. But I think he can agree that we've come really far, and before we couldn't even have a conversation about how our day was. We didn't really have that kind of relationship, but we've worked on it, and we've had some really hard conversations, some awkward conversations. We've cried and we've hugged and we've apologized, and I think mental health has been one of those topics that brought us closer together. I think it's important to normalize not being perfect and not needing to act like you're perfect, especially online. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I have sort of an unconventional approach to connecting with people. And I'm sure some people are thinking, like, how can you come on this platform every single day and humiliate yourself? And to me, it's not humiliating. It's just me being honest and open about who I actually am and just not be embarrassed about it. And I want other people to know that it's okay to be yourself. Like really be yourself. You know, if you read some of the stories that I share, like, I really don't hold back much anymore these days, which is kind of scary but liberating, you know? So anyway, just opening up that discussion and breaking down barriers and expectations is a great first step if you're going through something and you feel like you're trapped and can't find a way out. But this video has been a journey. I never thought in a million years that I'd ever open up this much on the internet, which is literally the scariest place on earth. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Thank you for hopefully not laughing at me when I was sobbing uncontrollably. Thank you for all the love and support you guys show me on a daily basis. I really cannot convey how appreciative I am for that kind of support system, and I really don't take it for granted. Since this week was so heavy, I think I need to take a week off. I haven't really decided yet. But if I don't upload next week as scheduled, you know why. I kind of need to dial it back a little bit and slow it down. I have a lot of projects and collabs coming up, and I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and I need to get my priorities in order. So anyway, as Pudge would say, I guess I'll see you in the next time.